5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're now tuning in to Way Gaming Podcast, hosted by OneWaySoldier. We answer your gaming-related questions and talk about gaming-related topics. Now available on major platforms like iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, and others, helping you game with a better understanding.
Hey, God bless you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Way Gaming. I'm your host, OneWaySoldier, or you can call me Carl. And here on Way Gaming, we answer gaming-related questions and talk about gaming-related topics. And before I start this episode, again, and I feel like I do this too much, guys, and I sincerely mean this, I do apologize that I didn't post a new episode on January 28th. January 28th, we had a major snowstorm over here, at least where I'm at in the northeast. I live in Connecticut, so yeah. We got a major snowstorm called Bobby. I think the snowstorm is called Bobby. What a name. Bobby came through. And then also last weekend too was my mother's birthday as well. So, we celebrated the whole weekend. Amen. And praise God. Yeah. And again, with the snowstorm, that just caused a lot of things to be delayed, but here I am back again this week, and then also next week. Again, the schedule will continue as normal. Every Friday I'll upload a new episode of Way Gaming. Thank you so much for bearing with me, and again I do apologizing again for a delay. 2022, I will get it right. Amen. So continue on to this episode. So on this episode of Way Gaming, I received a question from a listener called Princess Kyrie. And she asked me this very interesting question. She said, "Hey Carl, I am thinking about getting back into gaming. I currently have an Xbox One, but all I see when I go in stores is the Series S mostly in stock than the Xbox Series X. So I wanted to ask you, what console do you recommend me getting into? Which console I should purchase to jump right into next gen / current gen?" And that is an outstanding question. So I'm going to, a quick answer to this and then a long answer. Of course, I'm going to answer this detailed, best way I can, detailed. And there's a lot to, a lot of details to cover. So the quick answer is, if you just want to play single player next gen games, right, on the Xbox. So if you want to play native Series X games, single player wise, matter of fact, a cool feature that you could do on your Xbox One is that you can actually stream. You can now stream through Game Pass Ultimate. You can stream Xbox Series X games now on your Xbox One console, which is pretty cool. But if you're on the Xbox One, like the VCR, I call it the VCR model, the first Xbox One model, I do believe the max resolution you'll be able to stream will be 1080p, or I think that's across the board. 1080p, I think is general. But anyway, you can stream Xbox Series S games. Also, yeah, that's if you want single player games. But if you are a competitive gamer, if you play competitively, Warzone or Fortnite, etc., then you may want to invest in a Series S and or Series X. And I will answer that right now, the more detailed explanation. And definitely, if you're a competitive gamer, I think it's pretty obvious, the Series X, definitely. But I wouldn't sleep on the Series S as well. So now I'm going to get into the more detailed, bigger answer, so to speak. All right. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the different specs between the two. So I'm going to bring it down like that first. So the Series, they both have 8 cores or 8X cores, custom Zen 2 CPUs, but the difference is really the teraflops between both consoles and also memory. So the Xbox Series X offers 12 teraflops of GPU power, but the Xbox Series S model only has 4 teraflops of GPU power. Then the Xbox Series X has a 1 terabyte hard drive in it, NVMe Gen 4 SSD in it. But only 802 gigs of that is available to the user. The rest is reserved for the OS and also Oh my goodness. What was that thing called? Quick Play. There you go. Quick Play. Oh my goodness. And then the Xbox Series S offers a 512 gigabyte SSD inside, but only 364 gigs is reserved to the user for that. And yeah, that's not a lot at all. And especially games could easily go over 50 gigs, and especially Call of Duty. Vanguard wasn't so bad. I think at launch, Vanguard was like 70 gigs, a little less on the Xbox Series S. But yeah, so off the bat, I do want to advise, if you plan, like for example, let's say you get an Xbox Series S, and let's say you see yourself automatically getting that the expansion card for the Xbox Series X, so you can expand the memory, that 1 terabyte SSD card, which is like $200 and I think $18 or something. You might as well save that money and wait to get the Xbox Series X. So not only with the Xbox Series X, you would get a whole terabyte instead of half, but you also get the extra horsepower as well. So I would recommend, like, if you are planning off the bat, get the Series S. Oh, I'm going to buy the expansion card. Just wait. I recommend just save your money and put that money literally towards the X, because this Xbox Series S is $300, and then also the Xbox Series X is $500. And literally, if you were to buy the Series S with $300 and then buy the memory card, which is $200 something, you're basically buying the Series X. So I would definitely strongly encourage, just to save your money going that route. But if you're okay with having just 364 gigabytes, I mean, cool. That's awesome. And then, what you're getting in the Series S is an impressive machine. Also, the major difference between these two consoles is the Xbox Series X accepts you can play digital media on it, and you can also play physical discs on it. So you could play, so you have for example, an Xbox One library, physical library. You could play that on the Xbox Series X, as to where if you were to purchase the Xbox Series S, it's digital only. They removed the disc drive for the Xbox Series S, and so literally you're only allowed to play digital media on the Xbox Series S. Now, that wouldn't be a problem, obviously, especially with games with gold. If you racked up, or every month you managed to claim, games with gold, and, it's 4 titles a month, whatever, in all the years, you have a pretty big library. But also what's really cool is if you were to buy the Xbox Series X, you also, I do believe, to my knowledge, I should check this before I actually started recording. It's kind of embarrassing. I do believe it comes with a 3-month of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. So what's really cool is that you could buy the Xbox Series S, and what it's meant for is that it's affordable entry to the next gen, aka current gen. It's affordable entry, and then without making a major commitment to, you bought a console, all right, you have no games with it. Literally, you just drop $15 more for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, and then boom, out of the box, you have over 100 games to play day one when you buy the Xbox Series S, excuse me, and you don't have to make a big commitment as to, all right, you bought the Xbox Series X, and then, don't get me wrong, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate is available on both consoles. You could get Game Pass Ultimate on the Series X too, which is awesome. But I guess what I'm trying to explain is that the Xbox Series S, I guess, if you want to go the cheaper route and not make a major commitment in terms of spending or dishing out more than $500, and spending nearly $600 for like a brand new game or so, you can literally just get an Xbox Series S, and it comes with a trial of Game Pass Ultimate, or just drop $15 and then boom, you just have 100 games off the bat. So that concept alone is very, very, very appealing, in my opinion, and it's really cool. And the Xbox Series X as well. The Series X, same thing. You drop you're spending $500. Drop $15 in Game Pass Ultimate, and then you could immediately try Xbox Series X games with your subscription, which is very, very awesome as well. So specs wise, they're really impressive. Also, they both have hardware accelerated ray tracing. They both feature quick play or quick resume. That's what it's called. I said quick play, quick resume. Excuse me. And then they also both feature auto HDR, and then they also have, through backwards compatibility feature, FPF boost, which I will get to more in a few moments. So now that you know the different specs between the two, and I mean, it's pretty impressive too. Like, I mean, both of these are both impressive. I mean, what you're getting, both of these, if you were to separate them, they're both impressive. What's in there? They're both like basically high-end gaming PCs, basically. And especially for $300, I mean, come on, you're getting for the Series S, and you get to experience ray tracing for $300. That's very, very impressive, because I know if you were to get a PC, you have to drop $300 or more, especially this current age, much more, for a GPU alone that's capable of doing ray tracing. So it's cool that you buy a console for $300, price of a graphics card, boom, you have a console that is capable of doing ray tracing, which is really impressive stuff. And, same thing with the Series X, 500, it's really beefed up. So the next thing I want to go, so I'm going to move away from specs, and I want to move into the different, how should I say, I'll move on to backwards compatibility, because that's one of my favorite features of upgrading to a next generation console. I love backwards compatibility because obviously the console that came out previous, and you have tons of games for it, all that travels with you. So it was disappointing at first, went back in 2013 when the Xbox One and the PS4 came out, where backwards compatibility, was completely absent. Until 2 years later, Microsoft surprised everyone at E3 stage that backwards compatibility is returning for the Xbox One, and you could play your Xbox 360 disc and also Xbox One, which was very, very, very surprising. And Sony introduced some form of that, where Xbox, they offer the free route, where obviously you put in a disc, and then if you have a Xbox One disc laying around, of course there's a list online of compatible titles. But if you have one of those games on the list and you have the original disc for it and you insert it into your Xbox One, boom, you're able to download it. As to where Sony, they charge you to play PS2 games. So if you want to play Max Payne for the PS2, you would have to buy that at the store, which is like $15, I think, or $10. And, it's a case-by-case basis kind of thing. But anyway, back to the Series X. So what's really impressive is that the Xbox Series X and Series S is backwards compatible with all 4 generations. Limited, I'll say. And what I mean by limited is that because it's backwards compatible using emulation, and not natively. So in other words, they don't have, Microsoft didn't put a native original Xbox or original Xbox 360 GPU on the motherboard. Literally, there is being backwards compatible enabled through emulation. So because it's being emulated, they have to get permission from developers, legally, licensing, whatever, etc. So there's a list if you were to go on the Xbox website, and you can see the list for 360 titles that are backwards compatible, original Xbox, and the good news is every Xbox One title is backwards compatible on the Xbox Series X and S. So that is a good thing. So your library of Xbox One does travel with you. So another thing that I wanted to elaborate on, and actually I wanted to correct, because I believe in past episodes oh my god, I can't talk tonight, guys. I'm so sorry. I mean, it's a little late where I'm at. It's 9:40, if you consider that late, but just please don't mind me. Bear with me, and I appreciate it. So, praise God. So, wait, what was I? Oh, all right, yeah. So, where I tried to attempt to explain or elaborate on in previous episodes, I said that games that were Xbox One X enhanced, backwards compatible games are Xbox One X enhanced, they will not be Xbox One X enhanced on the Series S. And, due to recent research, that is not entirely true. So, I guess I generalized it. So Xbox One games, right? If the Xbox One games that are Xbox One X enhanced, just a random example, like the Evil Within 2, for example, or Gears of War, right? Gears of War 4. When you play those games on the Xbox Series S, you would run the Xbox One S version of those games. As to where if you play on the Xbox Series X, you're playing the Xbox One X version of those games. So for the Xbox One titles, there's a difference there. But Xbox 360 games, through backwards compatibility, Xbox 360 games, so games that are 720p, like for example, just to name a couple, like Forza Horizon 2, for example, Xbox, Gears of War 2, another one, etc. Games that are Xbox One X enhanced through backwards compatibility, those are still enhanced for the Xbox Series S. But the difference is, instead of it being a 4 times resolution, it will be a 3 times resolution, because the max capability of the Xbox Series X, you could do native 4K up to 120 hertz, as to where the Xbox Series S the maximum of the capability it could do is 1440p at 120 frames per second, even though that's not entirely true as well, but I'll get to that in a few moments. So in other words, when you play a 360 game that is Xbox One X enhanced, also like Fable Anniversaries, when you play it on the Xbox Series S, you'll be playing it at 1440p, rather if you were to play on the Xbox Series X and or Xbox One X, that game will run at native 4K, through backwards compatibility. But on the Series S, it will run at 1440p. Now, what I meant was, I said, oh yeah, that's not entirely true, is because games like Ori, Will of the Wisp, for example, on the Series S, it could run at 4K, native 4K, 60 frames per second, and or 1080p, 120 frames per second. And then The Tourist, which is an indie title, could run at native 4K, 60 frames per second on the Series S. So it's really a case-by-case basis, and I know it sort of adds a little confusion because Xbox messaging here, but pretty much the Xbox Series S is designed, the core design of it is to, it mostly runs at 1440p, 60 frames per second. So that's the selling point. Because also Crysis Remastered as well could do native 4K, but at 30 frames. But anyway, so in terms of backwards compatibility, that's where, that's the difference is. 360 game, that's Xbox One X enhanced, 1440p. If you're running an Xbox One game, that's Xbox One X enhanced, you'll play the Xbox One S instead of the X. Now, I also wanted to go into the different consoles. So they both feature, and again, this even works on backwards compatible titles. So yeah, I'll put this under backwards compatibility as well, is that both of these consoles does experience or have the capabilities of FPF boost, where FPF boost is a feature, and this is handled at the hardware level, where it's capable of you playing a game backwards compatible, and it's able to double or even triple the frame rate. So for example, I have a small list here, which is so cool. It really is a game changer. So, games that are like, for example, Battlefield, Hardline, and Battlefield 4, they support FPS boost. So when those games came out, you could play them 60 frames per second. I do believe both of those games were locked at a 900p resolution back on the Xbox One. But if you play it on the Xbox Series S, those games play at still 900p 60 frames. But with FPF boost, you can now play those two games at 120 frames, whether you're playing on the Xbox Series X and or Series S, I might say. But Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5 on the Xbox Series X, you can play those two games at 120 frames using FPF boost on the Xbox Series X, but on the Xbox Series S, those games, that feature is not supported for those two games for whatever reason. I guess it's probably too much on the hardware. Maybe it was causing stutters or game-breaking glitches. Who knows? Only Xbox. And then also, what the cool thing though is, like for games like Dark Souls. There was another one. Yeah, Dark Souls. You're able to play at 60 frames per second using FPS boost. So the game is still locked at a 900p resolution, but on the Xbox Series X and S, you get to play Dark Souls 3 at 60 frames per second, which is really, really awesome. But FPS boost, there's a small, if you were to go on Xbox.com and look at the FPS boost list, the games that are supported, there's a small handful of games that are not supported on the Xbox Series S. Like games like Dead Island, the Definitive Edition, and Dead Island Riptide, Dying Light, and Mirror's Edge Catalyst. For whatever reason, those are not FPS boost supported. Oh my goodness, what a tongue twister! FPS boost supported on the Series S, but on the Xbox Series X, obviously, no issues. I think you can actually play. Is it 120 frames? I think Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Either way, it's crazy, and man, it's a game changer. Yeah. So, but there is also just without using, outside of backwards compatibility, outside of FPS boost, there is games obviously that natively, or that's been optimized, I should say, that could play 120 frames per second or even 60 frames per second on the Series S, and obviously as well as the Xbox Series X. So for example, one of those games is Fortnite. Fortnite, you could play at 1080p, but at 120 frames per second on the Series S. Which is crazy to think about. I mean, man, you drop $300, and of course, if you have the TV that's capable of, well, okay, this gets really technical. So, if you have a TV, it's a case-by-case basis in terms of TVs. TVs that with a HDMI 2.0 output, right? Some TVs you're allowed to, the maximum performance you're able to do on that is 1440p, 120 hertz, which is cool, which is awesome. But HDMI 2.1 TVs, which, more TVs, newer TVs are coming out now, just to name one, or the TV that I love, that I picked up was LG's NanoCell 90, which supports native 4K at 120 hertz using the two HDMI 2.1 ports, right? But because the Xbox Series S is advertised as 1440p and stuff, it doesn't really bring an ultra HDMI cable. I do believe it brings a high-speed cable, which is capable of 1440p, 120 frames per second, as to where the Xbox Series X, native 4K, it brings an ultra HDMI cable, which allows a 48 Gbps pass-through, as to where HDMI 2.0, it's only 18 Gbps pass-through. Now, I know there's a lot of technical terms there, but to make things simple, if you still have a TV that could do 1080p, in other words, or only is HDMI 2.0, it's possible that your TV is you're still able to benefit from the 120 hertz feature using the Xbox Series S, because 2.0, like I just previously mentioned, can handle 1440p up to 1440p, 120 frames, but or you could set it to 1080p at 120 hertz. So that's a good thing. So you don't have to worry if you don't have a newer TV with an HDMI 2.1. That's a good thing. And also games like A Plague's Tale: Innocence, for example, that is optimized so you could play at 1080p, 120 hertz, even on the Xbox Series S, which is really cool. And of course the X, there's different molds on that. And, praise God, the list goes on. So, so basically, all I'm just saying, just with those facts named, essentially, so if you're just, how should I say, if you are busy, right? If you have a busy schedule, let's say if you want the best, right? The top of the line, and you want the best of what gaming has to offer for this current gen. Obviously, without a doubt, I highly recommend going for the Xbox Series X. It's, performance on that, the teraflops, really makes a big difference, especially if you're really into backwards compatible games, especially if you like games, because the 360 had amazing games. If you love games like, for example, Splinter Cell, matter of fact, you can explain the whole entire Splinter Cell series, even going back to the original Xbox. Splinter Cell, Part of Tomorrow, Chaos Theory, Splinter Cell Conviction, Blacklist, etc. You could actually experience those games through Xbox, because those games are now Xbox One X enhanced. You could experience those games at a native 4K resolution through backwards compatibility on the Xbox Series X. And also, because of the 12 teraflops GPU power, games always run at its peak. So games that are with an unlocked frame rate, you will mostly see that benefit if it's not optimized, through the developers. So, for example, games like Grand Theft Auto 4 on Xbox 360, there was an uncapped frame rate. So, in other words, a matter of fact, I think Digital Foundry did a fantastic video, and also other people on YouTube on a 360 used to fluctuate a lot. It used to fluctuate between 32 frames, 35, maybe some instances it shoots up to like 50 frames, but it goes back down to 28. It's all over the place, in other words, especially when scenes in the game get really, really heavy. One example in that game, I remember there's like a bank heist that you go through, and there's enemies everywhere, and you have to, escape and stuff, and frame rates really dip. But playing that game on the Xbox Series X is a solid lock 60. No hiccups at all, and it really is a game changer, especially with Grand Theft Auto 4. And the reason why I use that example, because I remember when that game came out, I played that. I think I was like in middle school when that game came out. And, that was the first Grand Theft Auto ever to feature online multiplayer. And I just remember the combat never felt right to me, even in single player. The combat always felt stuttery, especially when scenes became heavy. It was a game changer for the Grand Theft Auto series, but at the same time, just performance, you could tell back then, back then I was a kid, I just wanted to play. But looking back on that now, it was very, very noticeable, the drops. But so when I got the Xbox Series X and I popped that game in, oh my goodness, it feels like literally there's not really a need for a remaster besides PlayStation 5 people. I feel bad. PS4 and PS5 people that, until Sony, if they ever decide to do, make a PS3 backwards compatible, we're not really going to see anything change there. But it's been 2 generations already. Well, we're at the 2nd generation. So, there's hope that they, and also there's been heavy rumors that Sony is applying backwards compatibility on the PS5 for PS3 games, and that would be amazing because I would love to play Resistance and stuff. But anyway, going back to my point. So playing Grand Theft Auto 4 on the Xbox Series X, solid lock 60, Auto HDR, literally it feels like it's a remaster. And it's insane. It really is insane just how great that game runs on the Series X, and also other games as well. A matter of fact, games like Fear, for example, Fear 1 supports FPS boost. You could play that game at 60 frames per second through backwards compatibility. And, I could be here all day just naming games and my experience on the Xbox Series X. But in other words, yeah, games also that, because it looked like last generation with the Xbox One. I guess what Xbox was trying to do with the Xbox One X was 4K gaming, and they accomplished that. The thing is, the majority of gamers, I would say, or Xbox, as a matter of fact, you were to go on their website, they found a lot of their fans, I do believe they said most of their fans, prioritizes frame rate rather than resolution. Because don't get me wrong, I love 4K, and seeing the graphical fidelity of games, I love, for example, Monster Hunter World and just to name one, and so many other games. Homefront: The Revolution, even though it's a weird example, I know a lot of people don't play that, but that game native 4K looks sharp. It looks really good. It looks really, really good. And of course, other games native 4K, but when you play at 30 frames per second, it feels like it leaves room. It leaves room for much to be desired. But when you're able to play games at not only native 4K resolution, but at 60 frames per second, 4K 60, it's a big big game changer, and it really adds to the immersion and also response time. It makes the game really responsive and etc. So on the Xbox Series X, you can have more experiences like that. So yeah, if you want the best in terms of that, and just a few examples I just named, and if you don't want to really be like, oh man, does this game support FPF boost on a Series X, or does the game support FPF boost or whatever? Because literally the list, every game on the FPF boost list supports Xbox Series X. But if you don't want to worry about that, if you were to pick up the Series S, then I just highly recommend just going with the Xbox Series X, especially like I mentioned earlier, the beginning of this episode. If you're thinking about upgrading to a memory card, as soon as you get the Series S, because of the 300 something gigs that's available, you might as well save your money and go on the X, get the Series X whenever it's available. Especially, I know there's a big shortage right now. We're still going through that. The good news is, though, there is a lot of stores that has been having restocks as of recently. For example, I do believe Target, now it's policy that you could walk into a Target, and if they have a Series X in stock, it's policy that they sell it to you in person. You don't have to go online and be like, oh, okay, put this on hold for me, and then you go in. You can literally walk in one morning, and if they get a fresh restock of Series X's, boom, you could buy it. It's literally policy for Target. Places like Walmart and other stuff, it's still, you got to go online and battle the bots. And if you're going through that, I'm so sorry, but I pray you get one. In Jesus' name. But minus all that, if you don't care about the best, you just want to jump into the current gen, if you just want to play Fortnite at 120 frames per second and other games at 120 frames per second, and don't get me wrong too, also games with unlocked frame rate, you still get to benefit at its peak performance as well. So I do believe also Grand Theft Auto 4 actually, playing it on the Series S, you still get to experience it on at 120 hertz. At 60 hertz. Excuse me, at 60 hertz. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. All these numbers are getting me confused a little bit. But games on uncapped frame rate, or BioShock 1 for the Xbox 360. If you go to the options menu, you can uncap the frame rate, and boom, you get a 60 frame per second lock. And that's just running through backwards compatibility. It's running on solely horsepower, also because the RDNA 2, technology is inside the Series S as well. So, if you don't really care about resolution, if you don't really care about Xbox One X enhancements, other than the 360, and you still get great performance on the Series S. It's just, there's a lot of games that are optimized for Xbox Series X and S that you're not going to get the full benefit on the Series S. And I think one of them is like Ghost Runner. That game, for example, it could do 4K 60. But on the Series S is 1080p, and I think 60, or there's an option for I think 1440p maybe, but at 30 frames. And in other words, is also Yakuza Like a Dragon, that game as well. It's like 900p but 60 frames per second. On native Series X is at 60 frames, 4K 60. So in other words, it's a case by case thing. But in other words, you will experience it. The Series X, you're not going to get the full benefit of things, but you could still experience a handful of games. Just the $300 price tag alone, you get to experience a handful of games at a much improved frame rate, if it has an uncapped frame rate and etc. Or if it's optimized for Xbox Series S, you still get that benefit. And again, $300, and with additional 15, you get a whole library, access to a library of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. So in other words, at a cheaper level, you just have access to all these games that you want to play, and you can play with your friends. It's really pleasing, and it's really impressive. I will say it's definitely impressive. And I know I feel like I spoke more in this episode on the Series S. It's just, I guess, and don't get me wrong, I love my Series X. That's hands down overall one I recommend. But if you're on a budget, if you just want to drop into this current gen and if you want to still experience 120 frames per second, again, case by case basis, $300 for the Series S. Oh, and if you don't care about buying physical media, if you just want to jump into digital games, which, I really don't recommend either, because me, I'm a retro gamer. I love my physical copy of games. I love to look at a wall and I see the legacy of titles, but if you don't care about that, if you just want your library to be fully digital, then Series X, I might really say it's for you, Princess Courier, and I'm not sure. One thing I should have done, I'm not sure if like Call of Duty Warzone could take advantage of 120 hertz. I doubt it. I think 60 frames still on the Series S, but as to where the Xbox Series X, you could play at 120 frames per second. Call of Duty Vanguard, you could play at 120 frames per second on the Xbox Series X, but I'm not too sure on the S. I believe that feature is absent on the S, to my knowledge. So there you go. I hope I answered that as detailed as possible. I know I sounded a little over the place. I do sincerely apologize for that. But hopefully, Princess Courier, I answered the question. I hope that I was able to assist making your decision if you so choose. But again, if you just want a single player experience and you at the moment want to wait for the Series X, don't want to go for the S, you could just stream Xbox Series X games on your Xbox One. And that's something really amazing what Xbox is doing. It really feels like no gamer left behind sort of thing, So that's something you may want to consider as well until the Series X is in stock in stores, and is everywhere. And in terms of reports, I do believe we might see this issue with. There's going to be restocks happening this year, no doubt about it. But I read that this shortage deal, I think from Bloomberg or something, may not end until late 2022 or as early 2023. So it might be a little rough year, but whatever you decide, I pray you get it, you deserve it, and God bless you. And I hope you find this useful. All right. So that's all for me. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in. If you have a question or a topic you want me to address here or answer on the show, you can send an email at twgpquestions@gmail.com. Make sure you write question at the subject bar, and please leave your name in the message, in the question, so I could probably address you here on the show, and hopefully your question and or topic will be featured in the next episode. Also, you could, if you don't want to send me an email, that's fine. I'm also on Twitter, so if you want to send me a message on Twitter, you could send a tweet at Way Gaming as well. And also, I am on YouTube. There's been, if you were to go on my YouTube, I think there's only a few episodes on there. I'm working. I know I said there's probably 3 episodes now. I'm so bad. I'm sorry, guys. But I'm working on it. I am working on it. You're going to see more episodes on there. But every new episode is released on YouTube. So you could, find my YouTube at True Way Gaming Podcast on YouTube, and leave a subscribe, and if you prefer to listen over YouTube, you could do that as well. Also, I do have an Instagram as well, True Way Gaming, True Way Gaming on Instagram, and you see the logo on Instagram page. And if you just you're curious to what I post on there, or maybe some hints to what future episodes will be, you could definitely check that out as well. And I thank you so very much again, and wherever you are, if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes or Google Podcasts, etc., please leave a like, subscribe, follow, tell your friends and family about True Way Gaming. Tell them if they want to tune into a podcast where the host has interaction with the listener. Tell them about True Way Gaming, and literally anything gaming related, topic or question. So yeah, thank you guys very much for all your support, for sticking with me, and I love you guys. God bless you. I love you. Jesus loves you. My name is OneWaySoldier, and this is the end of my transmission. Outro. Hit it.